All right, today we are pulling back the velvet curtains on a film that didn't just tell a story, it basically invented a whole new way to show nightmares on screen. We're talking about the twisted, foundational masterpiece, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
So I want you to think about that for a second. What does a nightmare actually look like? How do you even begin to film a feeling of madness? Well, let's dive into how this 1920 classic answered that exact question, creating a visual style that would, and I mean this literally, haunt cinema for the next 100 years.
Okay, to really get what makes Caligari tick, we have to understand the world it came from. So let's head back in time, right into the dark, chaotic heart of Weimar Germany.
So the film comes out in 1920. Now put that into context. It's just 2 years after Germany's crushing defeat in World War I, and only 1 year after the very fragile Weimar Republic was established. This was not a happy, stable time. It was a nation just thrown into absolute social and political chaos. For the people living through this, life felt completely unhinged. It was unpredictable and, honestly, pretty terrifying. So you can imagine audiences weren't exactly lining up for simple, realistic stories. No, they wanted art that reflected the total turmoil they were feeling on the inside.
And right out of this collective societal anxiety, a radical new artistic movement was born, and it was one that perfectly captured the feeling of an anxious mind: German Expressionism. You see, Expressionist artists, they just weren't interested in painting the world as it looked. They were like, forget objective reality. Instead, they wanted to show our inner psychological reality. All the raw emotions, the anxieties, the deep, dark fears of the human psyche.
And this right here is the absolute key difference. Realism, that's about showing the world as it is, objective, what's outside. But Expressionism, that was all about showing how a chaotic world feels on the inside, totally subjective. It's really the difference between a photograph and a fever dream.
Okay, so let's get into the good stuff. How did the filmmakers take this wild artistic idea and translate it into a visual style that had never been seen before on a movie screen?
The plot itself is, well, it's deeply unsettling. You've got this mysterious hypnotist, Dr. Caligari, and he's using a sleepwalker named Cesare to go around and commit murders. But here's the crucial part. The entire story is told from the subjective and maybe totally unreliable perspective of our protagonist, Francis.
But as creepy as the story is, that wasn't the most revolutionary part of this film. No way. The director, Robert Wiene, he made this incredibly bold decision. He hired 3 expressionist artists to design the sets, not as real places, but as living, breathing, painted canvases. A huge risk.
And the results are just some of the most iconic images in all of film. I mean, look at this stuff. Nothing in the world of Caligari is straight. Buildings are leaning at these sharp, impossible angles. Windows aren't rectangles, they're jagged triangles. And the streets themselves are these winding, distorted paths that completely defy any sense of normal perspective.
So here's the takeaway, the most important point. The world itself becomes a picture of a fractured mind. The hostile, broken geometry of these sets, it wasn't just a backdrop. It was the characters' inner paranoia and madness made physical for us to see.
And this radical thinking went all the way to how they used light. Get this, in a move that would be just unheard of today, they often painted the shadows directly onto the sets, sometimes even onto the actors' costumes.
This comparison really makes it click. In traditional filmmaking, you use a light source to create realistic shadows. But in Caligari? Nope. Light and shadow are literally part of the set design. They're not there to light the scene, they're there to create tension and to show us that inner dread. It is pure theatricality and a total rejection of realism.
All right, so let's talk about the legacy. How did this completely one-of-a-kind experiment end up casting such a long, dark shadow over the future of cinema?
Its influence it's just undeniable. You can literally draw a straight line from Caligari's psychological horror visuals to the moody, shadow-drenched style of film noir in the 40s. I mean, noir took those high-contrast shadows and unsettling cityscapes and just ran with them. And then you can follow that line all the way to the gothic, kind of whimsical look of modern directors like Tim Burton. His movies are filled with that same distorted, dreamlike vibe. So it was so much more than just creating spooky visuals. By throwing realism out the window, Caligari became this huge landmark. It's often called the first true horror film because it proved that movies could be a powerful way to explore really complex psychological ideas.
It showed filmmakers that sometimes rejecting reality is the only way you can reveal a deeper emotional truth.
And ultimately, that's where the film's real power comes from. It's this core message. It taught us that the scariest landscapes, the most terrifying monsters, they're not out there in the world. They're deep inside the twisting hallways of our own minds.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Over 100 years later, its influence is still everywhere. A powerful testament to just how profoundly this silent masterpiece taught us all what a nightmare really looks like on film.